What does it mean to beat Bug Fables without using medals or items? Consider this. In most RPGs, you give your characters equipment to give them an advantage in battle. In Bug Fables, this equipment comes in the form of medals. So basically for the entire adventure, we're only leveling up either HP or TP. Yeah, that alone doesn't sound very hard, but to make things more interesting, we also cannot use any items in battle either. So items like Queen's Dinners, Abominations, Spicy Candy, none of that's allowed. And against the first boss, Spooter, we know exactly what to expect. Something you'll notice is that in general, just attacking is all I can really do, and that's all I really have to say. I'm also in general very used to playing this game in hard mode, and sometimes even hardest mode. Because of this, most of the time when I miss super blocks, it's because I'm so used to the timing of hard mode that I'm just not ready for a slower attack to hit me. This ends the life of Spooter and the end of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 has a few more important fights, and a few of those fights I never actually recorded on normal mode. One example is the Wasp Trooper, which has 2 defense but 10 HP on the hard mode. If I was on normal mode, I lead with V, Tornado Toss, have Leaf relay his turn to Kabu, and attack twice with him. And then I'd probably do the same thing, except I'd have Leaf Spy here instead. The alternative in my opinion was just all around better. Arya was also a fight which I did in hard mode. I had Kabu in front and just kept attacking. Then the Venus Bud spawned, and I took my chance using Icefall here. And with some lucky freeze luck, that's all she wrote. So far this challenge was very easy, so I figured let's try fighting Devourer. And it's here we find our first signs of struggle. First thing I'll say is that I was very surprised by the fact that Devourer on normal mode does not have defense. I thought to lead with Kabu because I figured that he'd be able to do the most damage here, but no, because it has no defense, Leaf is actually better as an attacker. That's not the only event that happened here either. There were also some times where a bug got trapped in his mouth by him slamming into the ground. On my third attempt, however, I basically just spammed Frigid Coffin with Leaf in the front. And though Leaf was forced to fall, both V and Kabu survived, and the Devourer was no more. So we lost a couple of times, but ultimately it was not too bad. And savor that moment because there won't be much struggle from here on out. It is insane how nerfed Zasp and Mothova were in this run. Like, Zasp has more HP, but he has no defense. So he's honestly almost as frail as Mothova is. He also does almost no damage unless he attack Mothova, which I didn't because I knew that would not be a very good idea. And speaking of Mothova, not only does her stinging do only 1 damage to my bugs, but she can throw only 1 note at a time. Also, these notes are much slower than I'm used to. It's honestly kind of pathetic. Especially since oftentimes I bemoan how this is the hardest boss in the game for me. Up next then is the Venus Guardian, which has more HP but no defense. So once again, even though this isn't necessarily favorable to my muscle memory, Leaf is actually my best attacker here and it's just a fact. That much though should not surprise me. But what did surprise me was learning that if you freeze the Venus Guardian on normal mode, Venus doesn't rescue it. She leaves it encased in ice, and as a result, you can actually just stall for time if you really had to. Safe to say I was stunned, though clearly not as stunned as Venus was in this boss fight. Safe to say, it became clear this challenge was kind of a joke. And so I tried this fight on hard mode. In fact, in a future video, you can expect to see this entire run being done on hard mode. To start, Chapter 3 has Mr. Scarlet take the field. The way I fought him, he was defeated before he even had the chance to increase his attack power permanently. Gotta love Frigid Coffin, am I right? The Bandit and Wasp ambush was also really tame. It really just came down to basic combat, so I don't think it's really worth sharing either. On to the more pressing Chapter 3, however, there is the Honey Nation. Which, I kid you not, is a boss that I felt so comfortable fighting that I did it on hard mode too. And that alone should be enough to say that this fight was not hard. By now, I have plenty of TP, so what I was mostly doing was using Tornado Toss to do a lot of damage to a Honey Nation specifically, and when Obama Honeys respawn, I put Kabu in front, and I have him do his Dash Drew skill. And since the Honey Nation was so slow using its charge attack, it never got to use it. Having only about 10 HP generally means that a couple of Tornado Tosses, and then a basic attack from Leaf is generally enough to KO. Then there was V33, which was probably the first fight that was not the Devourer that was actually kind of interesting. Only V can fight this boss without using TP, and it still has 1 defense point on normal mode. So most of what I did here was have V in the front and use Tornado Toss a lot. Then my remaining 2 turns went to Kabu so he could use his basic attack here. This was a lot more common during Phase 2, but for Phase 1 it didn't really matter. Mostly thanks to the turn 2 B-Boop. But yeah, I really like using Kabu here in Phase 2 because by then, B33's defense and attack go permanently down and permanently up. What's important about the permanently down part though is that I can have V in the back to have her use Tornado Toss then, And Kabu's basic attack does a lot more damage while in the front. So I go from doing 4 with V, then 1 with Leaf and 2 with Kabu, to then having V in the back, have her go first, use Tornado Toss and do 4 damage, so Kabu can then do 7 damage while he's in the front, with Leaf relaying his turn to him. Next was Mother Chomper, who was no biggie. She has no defense, which at this point I'm starting to expect, so I had Leaf in the front, and all Leaf really did was just spam his basic attack on the Mother Chomper. I wasn't really worried about Chomper spawning behind her, I wasn't worried about taking damage from the Chompers either, and when Mother Chomper gained permanent hustle status, I had Leaf spam Frigid Coffin. Continue until death. Then I tried Broodmother, and something I realized really quickly is that this fight would have been really annoying if it was on hard mode, because Broodmother oftentimes spent her whole turn summoning midges. And then it dawns on you that if this was on hard mode, Broodmother would have summoned 2 midges, alongside a potentially delayed electric attack. Anyway, midges on normal mode don't really amount to anything. It's funny, the fact that they have only 2 attack on their Avenger die means that there's really no penalty to attacking Broodmother here, because if you super block, then all of a sudden the midges do absolutely nothing. Like, this looks like a 3-on-3, but no, it's still a 3-on-1, with maybe the occasional chip damage because of human error. Another fight I'd like to show off is Carmena. Now, just in case anyone in the comments down below wants to make a fuss over picking up medals in this game, in the case of Carmena, I have to beat all the Spike Cards Masters first to reach her, which means I'm also forced to help Chuck and pick up Mighty Pebble from him, so I can't really help that. Though just saying, I'm not getting chomping in this challenge, since recruiting her means getting another medal in ADBB Enhancer, not to mention Tardigrade Shield. So there you go. Now I'm ready to fight Carmena. Or at least I thought I was, but then I realized I can't burrow under the ground yet. So I thusly broke into someone's home and tried to take something I should not have taken, and so I was ambushed, tackled, and ultimately subdued like this was to catch a predator.
Oh, please, sir! Please, sir! Get on the ground! Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord.
Then I escaped the hideout being able to dig now, and now we fight Carmena. And guess what? She doesn't have defense either, but she's not with the ice either, so it doesn't really matter here. So what's there really to say about Carmena? There was definitely some RNG, some good, mostly mediocre. Sometimes I got inked, other times I was healed, a few times the roulette poisoned her, and then there were Frigid Coffins from a Leaf. Oh wait, that's not even the wheel's fault, that's mine. Ultimately not very noteworthy. Then there was Callie and Kabu. I'd have ended this fight sooner, but Kabu kept taunting V. So a lot of this fight was just using Frigid Coffin with Leaf, and just slowly but surely knocking out Callie. This fight was a lot more interesting in my hard mode playthrough, and in that challenge, I was allowed to use items in battle too. Did you ever get taunted 3 times in a row? Sen and PC, they were just kind of a joke. It was like just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks. Ice Falls, Tornado Tosses, Under Strikes, basically anything that came to mind I just used here. Very much a Tim encounter though. Played some spy cards, paid about 400 berries for a doll, got some red paint, had V and her sister makeup. Wait, what chapter were we in again? Oh yeah, chapter 4. So, Astophiles. This fight bans items. Great. I already banned items. I just have one thing to say. With how this fight had to be designed, it's really funny seeing that oftentimes, Astophiles can only do 1 damage per turn to me, and that's only if he swings his sword on the first time he attacks. Up next is the Dune Scorpion, who I proceed to just beat the tar out of. Sometimes I use Dash Through, other times I'm using Understrike. A Frigid Coffin here, a Tornado Toss or Hurricane Toss there. I think you can figure out the rest. And finally the Watcher, who apparently has to spend an entire turn to summon a barrier. You know what's funny? Normal mode is actually a lot more fair than hard mode, it feels like. But I'm so used to hard mode that normal mode just feels like easy mode for me now. Because oftentimes, I had to design strategies that would work regardless of what kind of RNG would happen here. And now, I don't have to worry about that. It's actually really funny. The Watcher also does not gain hostile status upon a certain HP trigger. Nope, it's just more of the same, in more ways than one. We're in chapter 5 now, but for all intents and purposes, I don't have Frost Relay, and I don't have any other skills like Ice Rain either. So for Tidal Worm, assume we're still in chapter 4. On one hand, this boss is notably easier, because the tail only needs 7 damage to be knocked down, not 10. On the other hand, with how often Tidal Worm was using its water spray attack, this fight was really down to the wire. And I really wish I did have Frost Relay because of how close this fight really was. But we managed to barely win. But only barely. It didn't help that near the end of the fight, Tidal Worm summoned a Water Strider to help it. It's pretty weak being that this is normal mode, but we could have been in very real trouble. And the fight ended with literally everyone at low HP. But a win's a win, am I right? I felt like fighting some more bounties, and I have Ice Rain now, so let's try also fighting the Sapling King. And my god, this is the easiest boss in the entire game. No exaggeration, I cannot believe how badly this boss was nerfed on normal mode. There are times where the Sapling King just flat out won't attack. At first I thought it was because I had combo in the back using taunt, because earlier in the fight, the Sapling King did throw out its Heart Seeds, and they still do lower my attack stat whenever they hit me. And of course, Leaf is my strongest attacker, I want to be able to use Ice Rain, and maybe even Frost Relay sometimes. But no, on one turn I didn't use taunt, and the Sapling King just sat there and did absolutely nothing. What the heck, why not? Pretty freaking sad boss if you ask me. Maybe one day I'll make a list of my top 10 easiest Bug Fables bosses. If I do, expect to see the Slacker at the top 5. At first I was bored, but after this fight, I was thoroughly underwhelmed. So screw it, Moth, let's fight it. Since Moth has defense, both Frost Relay and Ice Rain are pretty nerfed. Which means that this fight can take a very long while, and I'm also taking a lot of hits in the meantime. And remember, I can't really heal myself outside of using V's stash moves, and that of course still uses up TP, so I have to be pretty smart. And you know, I thought I was being pretty smart in this fight, but there were two problems. Problem number 1, not a single one of my attacks with Leaf were able to freeze Moth. And I was using not only Ice Rain, but also Frigid Coffin. So like that, my luck was really bad. And secondly, I let myself get hit by the Poison Laser that also lowers your attack stat for like 6 turns. And my attack stat by now was so absolutely trash that I just could not make any fast progress. It got to the point where I was getting close to the end of the fight, and then a Zombita was summoned. And this thing will freeze the Frigid Coffin, but I don't have a lot, and because my attack stat is still so low, it also means that Zomoth is just taking my hits really well now. I do KO Zomoth, but then the Zombita was able to finish V off because, of course, what's she gonna do against an enemy with defense? Not much, that's what. Kinda funny though, I have no items, no medals, and I almost won still. Meanwhile, my second attempt saw me actually freeze Zomoth a few times. There was also no Poison Laser, and the cordyceps of choice to be summoned here was a Zombie Ant. To Zomoth's credit, at least it managed to beat me once. Now I kinda forgot to go get Frost Boiling from meeting Leaf's family for the first time, so let's instead just focus on fighting the beast, how about that? I could have fought this boss in normal mode, but I didn't want to do that. On my very first playthrough, I actually managed to beat the beast with hard hits equipped by accident. So I feel pretty dang confident that this fight won't be very hard. And it really wasn't. Thanks to Kabu's ability to ignore defense, we were able to do damage pretty dang quickly here. And that's in spite of having to use V's turns to sometimes heal everyone, as well as the chance that the beast will dig underground to try and steal our HP. For the most part, Leaf was just kind of there, but if I really had to, I did have Cleanse on standby, which did come in handy when the beast tried to use the charge attack against me. Before too long, the beast had only 10 HP left, and it was just Kabu versus the beast. And I'm not even going to try and build up any suspense here. I have so much HP, it doesn't even really matter. And since Maki's no longer hovering over us, we go ahead and fight Riz too. Now, unlike the beast, who is for the most part pretty much the same as on hard mode, at least as far as I can tell, since on normal mode it still has 1 defense point, Riz has 0 defense, which means he's very susceptible to being hit by repeated Frost Relays. And in case you're wondering why I'm not using Ice Rain very often, it's because Frost Relay does more damage than Ice Rain. Largely due to the fact that I can't use medals or items, and that means that I can't really buff Leaf to high heavens like I normally would. I kinda feel bad for him now. Just not bad enough or I actually would regret doing this. So I definitely don't feel bad for fighting Ultimax. This fight's as easy as sin. When you have this much TP, you can just go hog wild and not really care what you do. I know I didn't. Why should you? I'm expecting Ultimax with my Beamerang. Anyway, Chapter 6, and it's here for a few moments we have access to Elizabeth II's Royal Decree, which just so happens to make the Primal Weevil a much easier boss fight than without it. Despite the fact that this mini-boss has 1 defense point, thanks to Royal Decree, our Frost Relay will still do damage after the 3rd hit. Ah yes, the best queen in the game proving her worth all the same. There's also Frozen Drill, but it's not as strong. Still useful near the end of the fight, and not too much later, it was just over. We can head to the Coliseum, but I want to try fighting False Monarch first. A lot of HP, but not even in hard mode does this boss have defense. so Frost Relay is just fantastic here. The False Monarch also just made no attempt at either lowering my attack stat or summoning Moth to heal it later, so despite its massive HP pool, it went down without much of a fight. Something I cannot say in my challenge where I did this exact same run with hard mode on with items allowed. Bear with me, I know the pace of this video was really fast, but the Coliseum is right after that, and I don't want to waste any time. The Forsaken Landers were really easy. A single understrike with Kabu, we pummel the Mimic Spider, they're done. Then there's Cross and Poi. And get this, Cross has 0 defense. And after those two jokers are eliminated, we get to level up, which then leads us rather nicely into the two clowns themselves, Motiva and Zasp. Zasp still has 0 defense, so both of these two are extremely vulnerable to Frost Relay. So I have a game plan. I figured I already know exactly what I want to do here, and my brain was going in and out. In fact, I was paying so little attention, I accidentally pressed the button for Frost Relay too early, and I managed to only get 6 hits off on Motiva. I also froze Zasp solid because of course I did. I mean, yeah, this is normal mode, but all the same, I don't like having to worry about having extra attack power from Motiva getting knocked out. Zasp was then able to hit me one last time before I went to use Frost Relay on him, and then one more frozen drill to seal the deal. Leading us to the final optional boss in this entire challenge. Outside of the post game, of course, Peacock Spider. And this boss I find is very interesting. Unlike on hard mode, Peacock Spider can sometimes also summon jumping spiders. So for some reason, on hard mode, they made this boss more predictable. That's a very confusing design choice, but okay, I guess we'll roll with it. In any case, this boss has defense, so Frost really isn't very viable here. Frozen Drill is still pretty good though, and it's really our only move that can directly attack the Peacock Spider for good damage as well. In the meanwhile, I slowly but surely am chipping down this jumping spider in front of me. Though knocking it out early may have been a mistake because then a diving spider was summoned, and this thing can bubble shield itself. I also have almost no TP left, and if this thing bubble shields itself too often, I just won't be able to win, and that would be a crying shame because I've already come this far. So slowly but over time, Peacock Spider is losing more and more HP, and before I know it, it's just V, Kabu, and Leaf versus this one diving spider that's really annoying to beat. It has times to attacking status as well as in power, and as I'm fighting it, I learned that the diving spider has exhaustion. The first turn it attacks, its attacks do 1 damage when super blocked. Then the second turn happens, and when I super block, I take 0 damage from its attacks now. So that's interesting, and in addition, I managed to win on my first attempt, leaving no other bosses but General Ultimax himself in the Ultimax tank. Most of this fight was using Kabu's basic attack. If ever my health got too low though, V's on standby using Sharing Stash. Sometimes Wasps were summoned which were pretty annoying and got in the way a lot, particularly because, again, Kabu is our best attacker. But this fight was mercifully short. I say mercifully because I was running out of TP. So good thing the fight ended where it did. Ultimax himself is basically harmless, just block his attacks and he does no damage to you at all. Though I must confess, I'm rather looking forward to seeing how Kyle tackles this fight since he's playing with Frame 1. You might be asking who Kyle is. He's another individual on YouTube trying this exact same challenge. If you're interested, I'll link his channel in the description down below. But he's also playing with some menu codes like, say, Frame 1 and More Farm. So if that interests you, check him out later on, why don't you? Now before beginning Chapter 7, I went to scavenge as many set boosting key items as I could find. However, to stay within the rules of this challenge, I can only use 2 heart berries and 2 bond berries. The heart berries I found were found both from Sun and the Defiant Root, as well as Zasp for helping him get back his Motiva doll. I can't grab the heart berry that's reward for getting 50 discoveries because at discovery number 25, you're forced to receive Victory Buzz, which is a medal. And we can't get the Whack-A-Worm berry either because you're forced to get Mightier Pebble from Tangerine. Regarding bond berries, despite beating every bounty boss in the game, we can't get the bond berry from Doppel because that means having to get 2 last attacks, 2 last stands, and a TP core. Realistically, in this challenge, we should have absolutely 0 medals. The only exception being Mighty Pebble because it's to fight Carmena. There is also the Super Pepper and Iron Seed, which I gave both to Leaf. And now, it's time for Chapter 7, the Everlasting Sapling. To start things off, I did this on hard mode because, well, the Deadlander ambush, as hard as it is, Remember that we have Royal Decree and Meki helping us, so we can do a lot of damage in very little time. And that goes double for the fire constructs who don't even get to attack. Not showing them off, I'm just saying. But then we reach the Wasp King, and it's here I made a bit of a mistake. I intended to take off hard mode because I wanted to fight this boss twice. One without hard mode, where I do not use any medals or items, which is this current challenge, and once with hard mode on, but also with Chompy, and of course the privilege of using items in battle. But I accidentally challenged this boss on a hard mode. And I figured, okay, I'll play it out anyway. Though I wholeheartedly expected myself to lose this fight. Well, not this fight, I meant the Everlasting King, but you get the idea. No, the Wasp King was easy. Because I have so much TP, I'm able to just spam Frost Relay here. And because your HP and TP is restored to max after the Wasp King is defeated, you really have no reason not to go all out here. It also helped that the Wasp King was pretty nice when it came down to not using any area of effect attacks, like the Fire Pillar. But once he's defeated, we did are confronted by the Everlasting King. And you know this boss. He heals just from being on the ground, he can fly, he can summon the artifacts, he has a grand total of like 150 plus HP, and not to mention, he can drain your HP using his own attacks. He also has a point of defense, so Frost Relay isn't reliable here. I mean, not like I could use it, this is a very long fight, and I need to keep everyone alive using my sharing stat skill on V. Most of this fight was having Combo Relays turn to Leaf, having V knock the Everlasting King down if he flies into the air, and just having Leaf keep attacking the Everlasting King with his basic attack. Sometimes I'd plop the Everlasting King back into the air using Kabu, but those instances are pretty rare. The worst part about this fight, however, is just how much endurance it takes to win. I may have a lot of TP, but it has to stretch pretty dang thin, and I can only use TP if I absolutely need to. One example being using Ice Rain when the Everlasting King has his artifact summoned. Beyond that, it was healing or bust. And as this brawl was nearing its end, I suspected that at some point I'd have to use some items. Maybe my fabled mushroom salad would finally get used. Maybe at some point I use this dry bread. Maybe a sip of this tea, or throw this flaming rock at his face. Or maybe I would beat the Wasp King and Everlasting King entirely itemless on hard mode in this challenge. On, you guessed it, my first attempt. So instead of fighting this boss twice, I had to fight this boss only once. So yeah, that settles it. So not only can you beat Bug Fables without using medals on hard mode, you can likely also beat Bug Fables without using medals or items on hard mode. And I know some of you want to see me fight Team Meki and Team Slacker, so I'll show you those fights. But first, if you enjoyed this video, consider making a donation, either in Super Thanks or becoming a channel member. I have some perks, but by no means let that make you feel inclined to donate any amount of money. Whether or not you donate, I much appreciate the fact that you watched this video this far in. And now for those two bosses.